Hi y'all, and welcome to the garden. It's been a busy week. I've worked out nearly almost every evening to get things done outside, including pulling up more of my annuals. I'd held some of them for the week, but I had decided, and after looking at the weather of this coming week, that there's an estimated temperature to get down to 33 degrees, which is probably going to lead to some frost this week. If we don't get any frost this week, it's likely we will get it next week. And I have a load of shrubs from Bailey's coming at the end of this coming week. So I didn't think they were going to make it, and then 𝗟𝗂𝗏𝗄 called me and they're being shipped there, and then 𝗟𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏, I'm paying them to deliver them here so I don't have to go pick them all up because there's quite a few of them. I think there's 43 shrubs and 5 or so trees, and I'll show you where I'm going to be putting some of the trees, but let's take a look at the front garden right quick and see what I've got done. So it looks bare, and I need to come through and add some mulch and pull some more weeds, but it's cleaned up for fall basically. Also need to come through and do a little shrub pruning up here. It's interesting, these 3 yews were all planted at the same time, but this one's gotten much more shrubby than the others have this season. So I got my grasses pulled up, all of the other annuals here. I've still left some grasses like those purple fountain grasses because they weren't necessarily in the way, but I'm going to be placing some shrubs where some of the other grasses were, so I dug those up. I did plant down here at the bottom 2 of the flowerful hydrangeas right behind these Let's Dance Can Do hydrangeas, so they will fill in that area hopefully quite well next year. I did go ahead and shut down my fountain because if any one of you have ever had a fountain before, you probably know when it starts getting cool, it is really hard to deal with that cold water and closing it down. So I'm letting it dry out. I'll probably spray it off and wash it off to clean it up a little bit. And then I have a cover for it. I don't love the covers over winter, but it's the best thing you can do for your fountain. So if you don't have a cover for it, consider doing one. Otherwise, water could sit in the bowls and break. So the top here is all concrete. The bottom is fiberglass with concrete surrounds. So the bottom will not be covered, and then I'll just keep water pumped out of that over winter. Or if it freezes a little bit, it's not the end of the world, but we want to protect these concrete tiers at least. Pulled up all of the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 that was here. Look at all of these seed heads. It's primarily sterile, so that shouldn't be a problem for next year. May have a few pop up here and there, but hopefully it won't be too much. And I need to come through and, like I mentioned, just lay some mulch over all of this area that I've planted. But I'm going to wait until I get all of my final shrubs planted and the annuals removed. You see I left these right here because they look so good, but those will also obviously be, if frost gets them, they'll be gone by the end of next week. Earlier this week, I got a load of perennials from Walter's Gardens and Proven Winners that I was really excited about. Some of those are going to be mostly going in the shrub border. I had told you that I'm not planting a whole lot of perennials in that shrub border, but there's going to be a few here and there for fillers, ones that get bigger, or grasses, that type thing. And then maybe like some things to tuck in between shrubs just to fill the spaces. One of them that I got is here behind me, and this is All Eyes on Me hibiscus. And it's a shorter hibiscus, and its blooms are gone for the day. I wish you had been able to see them, but they're really nice and pink. And since it's shorter, it won't detract from any of the other stuff that's going to be behind it. And I placed it here because this area is holding a bunch of water. And it's one of the reasons this lavender and some of these perennials haven't done so well this year. But perennial hibiscus is considered a bog plant, so I'm hoping it will thrive in this location. And I will probably come through, I'm going to give this lavender a little bit of time. If it survives over the winter, great. I may pull some of it up and actually move it to the cut flower garden, so it might be able to thrive a little better, because it is just slowly succumbing to the excess water in this area. And I'm not sure why. Most of the other bed is looking good, but it could be because it seems like there's a little bit of a low spot here compared to the rest of the garden surrounding it. Let's go take a look at the 40-foot long rose trellis that I've been trying to work on all season, but I got it completed this morning. So this rose trellis is something I had dreamed up late winter, early spring, and I purchased 11 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 roses from Heirloom Roses in the spring, and then these got planted about June. They grew super vigorously. I should have got them trellised up earlier, but this is a project that I just needed to sit down and do. It required me to be out here last night with a laser level, carelessly teetered on a ladder to be able to get the lasers all the way up and all the wires completely horizontally across even. I've had a few things in my garden that I've done before that I haven't really measured out, and then if it's not perfect, it bothers me for years. So let's take a look and I'll walk you through the process of how I did this. So I did shoot some footage of this and I'll put that on the screen, but essentially these are cable ties, or cable that you would use for railing on some of those new modern railings that you see, with some attachments here that I attached using these eye bolts. So I went through and screwed 4 eye bolts all the way up on each post. I was originally going to do 5 rows of wire, and then after I realized how vigorous this rose is growing, I went ahead and did 4. So they're roughly 2.5 foot apart, or 30 inches all the way up, starting at the bottom. So 2.5 foot from the bottom, and then 5 foot, 7.5, and 10 foot. And these posts average around 11 feet, but they're not all the same. If I can back up here, I'll show you. So I'm not sure why these posts were here originally. My thoughts are the barn that's next to it was originally going to be on this side, and then they decided to move it over. Or at one point it was thought to could be like a garage cover, and it never got there. So these posts have been in the ground for probably 20 years or so. And then they were just unpainted, and I painted them black and then got this metal railing on them. And because I can tighten this over time, we can keep this very straight. You can see how tall some of these roses have already gotten. And this is 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, as I mentioned, and 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 is estimated to get up to 11 foot tall. So it's possible that they may completely reach the top of this post over time, which will be exciting. And I will absolutely love that. Now the roses on these are really beautiful. All of the leaves are kind of facing that way because they had been leaning out. So they'll correct themselves over the next couple weeks and the leaves will turn back out. But let me see if I can find a rose that doesn't look horrible right now. They just got watered, overhead water to water in all of this catmint I put down here, but they're really stunning. So below here, I just put a line of Cat's Meow catmint, which smells really good. It'll get roughly 3 foot wide, 1 foot to 1.5 foot tall, so it'll fill in nicely between the roses. And I think it'll be a nice complement to these when they grow up. Now, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, one thing I've noticed over the past couple weeks is these beautiful rose hips. So they have beautiful yellow or orange rose hips as we're heading into fall. I've not done a whole lot of pruning on these this year, so any roses that have been left over have started to produce hips, and I'll continue to leave those probably towards fall. Now, something about climbing roses. Some climbing roses don't like colder conditions. You need to check the zones carefully, but some of them, the canes will die back over winter and then they'll grow fresh in the spring. I'm not sure about this one. I've only had a few climbing roses before, most of those being short climbers. I've never had a true large climber. So I think as vigorous as this one is, if we do have some dieback, obviously it's going to put off a lot of growth. It has grown this much since June. And a lot of climbing roses you actually want to train horizontally because they produce buds off of horizontal growth. So you can see I've trained a lot up, but I've also started training some side shoots horizontally. So the ones I'm training up will go up to the next row and then horizontally, and I'll keep doing that across until this entire area is filled. Some of them are much taller than others, but overall a lot of good growth from every one of them, and there are a total of 11 here. This week, consequence of some of the storm damage we had around here was lots of wood chip availability. So I contacted the township and actually had a chip drop off, and I have gotten 4 loads of wood chips over the past week, which is perfect timing for me to cover things and get new beds installed. That will primarily sit until spring. But let me show you some things I worked on this past week. You know, I've used chip drop primarily, and it's not super reliable around here. Every order that I've made, I've offered to pay at least $20 to $40 for the load, because if you don't know, the arborists who are dropping chips have to pay $20 when they drop at your house. So if you give them money, you're more likely to get if you at least cover the cost of dropping the chips, you're more likely to get a drop. But I've been waiting 2 months, and I finally got some, and it's put a lot of projects on hold. So this way, you'll notice that I removed the crabapple that was here. I also cut down the really big rose of Sharon and removed the lilac, which completely opened up this area quite nicely. So as much as I hate taking out trees, I'd showed you this crabapple was declining quite significantly. And a couple weeks ago, I walked by it and noticed that it had this huge bulge on the side of it. It was oozing sap, and it had grown over the past 4 weeks, almost like a tumor, to the extent that the bark had cracked. And I'll show you a picture on the screen because I did take one. So I knew I had intended to remove it anyway, but it definitely had to come out based on just those conditions. And in its place, I've got a lot of other trees coming, and I'm going to fill this spot out with other things. So let me show you what my ideas are for this space. So you'll notice with the shrubs I get from Bailey, I'm first going to start filling in the empty areas in this bed here. So we have a lot of empty space here, and then in this area, and then there's still spaces to tuck small things over on that side. But this week I came through with the initial load of wood chips that I did, and I created just a very rough bed around these green giant arborvitae that I planted last year that I got at the tree auction. So that this will eventually be, I probably won't get to it this year. This is just the start of this bed. But I want a nice pathway down here. You can see it here, and I will measure out so that it's equidistant all the way down, probably next year. Got to get all the shrubs planted and everything else wrapped up before I start working on finessing beds like that. But I'm going to end the bed over here. I will probably put more wood chips around this tree. And there's not a whole lot of planting that's going to go in this area. There will be a little bit. These green giants will of course grow up and grow on a little bit. But there's going to be areas in the center where I could stick maybe like some oak leaf hydrangeas or some things that got a little bigger that would give me some fall color in this area to kind of provide some privacy from the cut flower garden. And also, if we just head this way, you can see where this bed ends. I'm going to leave grass through here. And with the new trees that I'm getting, I'm going to start doing a very similar bed all the way back that is going to cover where these trees were. So as we look this way, the pathway will be very similar down this way, and then there'll be a bed that has short trees here. Got to leave the back side open enough to get a car through and the tractor through to work on the cut flower garden, and if anything needs to be done on this side of the property. So it won't be a super deep bed. It probably will start somewhere around here, right past the side of where this lilac was, where the dirt is, and then cover a good part of this area. It may not even cover where the Rose of Sharon was there. But it'll be a nice sweeping tree line, which will be pretty much is what is going to be in there. And it will provide some additional privacy, maybe plant some more evergreens. I have a lot of evergreens here, but there's not a whole lot of privacy from fall or in fall towards the other side of this tree line here. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. A lot of thoughts going into next year. There's still things obviously I need to wrap up now, including my irrigation and stuff. The weather is very odd right now. Typically it's sometimes a little cooler, but this has been one of those seasons that I tell y'all about quite often, where Ohio just sometimes goes from really hot to really cold really quickly. And it's been 80 degrees this week. The lows are getting lower, but even today was quite warm compared to what it should be. And I think it said an average of 10 degrees higher when I was looking at my weather today than it should be. So I didn't work out quite as long today, maybe 5 or 6 hours, enough to finish the rose wall and get a few things planted, but it's coming along and the season's progressing quite nicely, and I'm really ready to get in a few bulbs. I'm not planting a whole lot this season, but I am going to be planting a few, maybe back here in the back, around some of these shrub borders that will look quite nice, I think, in spring. Thank y'all for joining me on this video. My next projects this week are going to include transplanting some things for the cut flower garden. You know, I've told you there's some peonies on the property that I want to get moved to the cut flower garden because I don't typically love like the herbaceous peonies. They look really horrible by this time of the year, typically with some mildew, but if I can put those in the cut flower garden and get cut flowers off of them, that would be nice. And also there's some sedums I want to dig up and transplant to the cut flower garden as well. So just a few things here and there that I can get done in the evenings with the little sunlight I have left after work. Thank y'all for joining me, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.